Avatar: The Last Airbender is commonly referred to as one of the best shows to ever grace Nickelodeon with its presence. It's an epic story that's filled with great messages and a strong leading cast. Every now and then, though, an episode would come around that reminds you just how dark of a place the world of Avatar could be. In fact, there was one episode that was so dark that it still haunts viewers. Do you remember the episode titled The Puppetmaster? The episode opened on a dark and windy evening, and unbeknownst to Team Avatar, the ghost stories that they were about to share would become all too real. The group was sitting around a campfire, and, as young people tend to do in the woods for some reason, they decided to tell scary stories. And believe it or not, Katara kicked it off. And she began by telling an eerie story about a young girl from her village named Nini. She claimed that Nini was one of her mother's friends who disappeared during a winter storm. But even though she vanished, the people of Katara's village would still see smoke coming out of the chimney in her hut. At this point, Toph made an interesting observation that the rest of Team Avatar mistook as her trying to scare them even more. Little did they know, it would later turn out to be a real problem. According to Toph, she could hear the sound of people screaming coming out from under the mountain. Everyone listening was understandably on edge, but I don't think any of them expected to see an old woman appear out of the darkness. They all jumped at the sight of her, but the woman introduced herself as Hama and attempted to calm them down by reassuring Team Avatar that she had a warm and safe place for them to stay the night. Now, I don't know about you, but if a strange old lady appeared in the middle of the woods out of nowhere and offered me a place to stay, I'd run away as fast as I could because she must be a witch. But Team Avatar was way too trusting. They took Hama up on her offer and returned to an inn where they enjoyed some tea and spoke with Hama about the area. She warned them that the woods were dangerous and that people were mysteriously going missing during the full moon. Thankfully, according to her, they were safe at her inn. But could they really trust this stranger? Sokka was the first member of Team Avatar to grow suspicious of Hama and her inn, and it's a good thing that he was, because without his investigations, the rest of his team might not have learned the truth about the old lady. You see, as the episode continued, the group spent more time with Hama, and even went out of the village, which was where Sokka overheard the villagers talking about all the strange disappearances. While Toph and Aang took the disappearances to be the work of an angry spirit, Sokka became more and more worried about Hama. Especially when she eerily muttered about living in a mysterious town for mysterious children. He knew something was wrong, and the second that Hama was away from the inn, Sokka took his chance to snoop. Little did he realize he was about to discover an earth-shattering secret. Sokka stumbled onto a mysterious box that he thought to break into using his sword. The box was locked though, so he was forced to ask Toph to help him out. Toph began to earthbend a meteorite that she had fashioned into a bracelet and created a key that fit perfectly into the lock. But just before they opened the box, Hama returned. She walked in and caught the group rummaging through her stuff and decided to tell them the truth. Or half of the truth anyway. Hama revealed that inside the box was a whale-tooth comb, which was a sign that she actually came from the Southern Water Tribe, just like Sokka and Katara. The group bonded over a traditional Water Tribe dinner, and Hama explained how she ended up in the Fire Nation. According to Hama, she had many friends in the Southern Water Tribe, all of which were waterbenders, including her. One at a time, they were all captured by the Fire Nation. Hama claimed that she was eventually captured too, and sadly, she was the only prisoner who managed to escape with her life. This story moved all of the members of Team Avatar, and just like that, the group, including Sokka, were able to trust Hama once again. After that, the episode continued by showing Hama training Katara on the ways of waterbending, and teaching her some valuable lessons, including the idea that water exists in every living thing. She even taught Katara how to draw water out of flowers, though Katara didn't like that this practice ended up killing the lilies. Meanwhile, Aang, Toph, and Sokka were out investigating the disappearances in town. This eventually led them to one of the villagers who claimed was compelled to walk toward the mountain one night. He said that it felt like he was being controlled, but couldn't see what was causing it. According to the villager, he only managed to regain control of himself after the sun began to rise. After hearing his story, Toph realized something about the mountain, that she must have actually been hearing people screaming underneath it, as the episode earlier showed. This led the three members of Team Avatar to an underground mountain prison. Luckily, Aang, Sokka, and Toph were able to free all of the captured villagers, but this is when they learned that it wasn't a spirit that was responsible for their disappearances. Instead, it was the innkeeper Hama. Who could have guessed, right? After learning the truth about the prisoners, Aang and Sokka quickly ran to stop Hama, who was about to tell Katara the shocking truth about her imprisonment that shook the young waterbender to her core. You see, Hama explained to the children what happened to her and her villagers, but at the same time, she gave them a less detailed version of the story. This time, though, as she explained to Katara what really happened, Hama didn't hold back. Viewers got to see just how bad the living conditions were in the waterbender prison. Each of the benders was kept in single-person cells, far away from any water source. The Fire Nation guards made sure to pump dry air into the prison to ensure that they couldn't pull moisture from the air. And to make sure that the waterbenders couldn't manipulate their drinking water, the guards would tie their arms and legs up before haphazardly pouring water down their throats. For years, Hama was treated as if she was no better than the rats who ran through the prison. This slowly but surely changed Hama. It warped her from being that vibrant young girl at the beginning of the story to a hate-filled prisoner who began to view living things as nothing but water wrapped in flesh. In other words, Hama was forced to become the same as the monsters who tore her world to pieces. The elder waterbender explained to Katara that she learned to manipulate the water within living things by practicing on the rats that crawled through her cage. Hama learned that she could practically control living beings as her puppets by using the strength that the full moon gave her to essentially bloodbend them. She had apparently spent years mastering this technique before finally using it to take control of one of the guards. Hama forced him to open her cage, and then she walked right out of the prison that she had been trapped in for decades. It was at this point in the episode that a horrified Katara realized that Hama was responsible for the disappearing villagers and immediately began to rethink everything that she had learned from the elderly waterbender. Katara had second thoughts about learning the art of bloodbending, but do you think Hama would just let her walk away? Thus, Katara was forced to become the very thing that she had learned to fear, a bloodbender. After Katara denied wanting to learn how to bloodbend, Hama began throwing a fit and exclaimed that the young bender would have no choice. In her rage, Hama used the bloodbending technique on Katara, hoping to force the young child into submission. Little did Hama realize she was about to fight a water-bending prodigy. Katara quickly regained control of her body, citing the moon as the source of her strength. The pair began a fierce battle that ended up involving Aang and Sokka when they arrived on the scene. They were quickly frozen in place by one of Hama's attacks that Katara dodged through, then promptly used as puppets by the witch who tried to get Sokka to kill Aang with his sword. Lucky for them, Katara was reluctantly prepared to stoop to Hama's level. Katara began controlling Hama using the bloodbending technique in one of the most epic sequences in the entire show. After Katara managed to subdue her attacker, Hama was handcuffed and taken away by the villagers who vowed to imprison her for the rest of her life. It's a cruel irony that she would end up back where she learned her evil bending tactic, but sadly, Hama's innocence was too far gone. As she was pulled away by the villagers, Hama couldn't help but cackle as she sarcastically congratulated Katara on becoming a true bloodbender. At the end of the day, this was one of the darkest episodes of any kids show that I've ever seen. In just 24 minutes, the creators of Avatar: The Last Airbender managed to show the slow destruction of the entire waterbending culture. Not only that, but it showed the life-changing and personal story of a young woman who lived during what many deemed as a hopeless time in the world of Avatar. It was a time where the Avatar was nowhere to be found, and in Hama's case, the only way to survive was to turn into the very monsters that they were afraid of. Sadly for Hama, she took it too far with her bloodbending and would inevitably go down as one of the most terrifying characters in the entire series. What do you think, though? Were Hama's actions justified at all by the terrible conditions that she was subjected to for decades in that Fire Nation prison? Or did she allow herself to become too corrupted, as Katara implied? Be sure to let me know in the comments below.